Well, hello there, my bookish folks. Welcome back to the Chronicles for Reader. And I am the aforementioned reader, Welsh. I'm so delighted to have you all here. So today is September 1st, which means it is the official beginning of not only a new month, but also the Orilium Magical Readathon. And this is something that I have been doing since it came out. Like, I would participate in the readathon. Sometimes I wouldn't really finish it within that month, but I would always go back and complete all the prompts in the coming months, and I would finish everything that's set out to read. So I'm not new to this, but I've never actually done it properly as a month-long readathon. I've always been very lenient with when and how I read the books, which is how it's meant to be. It's supposed to be a very low pressure thing, but then I do want to complete it at least once properly. And now that I finally have a booktube channel, I thought that this would be a good time to attempt it. Usually it takes place in the months of April and August, meant to be the spring and autumn equinox. Well, the actual equinoxes are in March and September, but that's how it usually works. But this year it has been postponed to September, which I was a little sad about because I was looking forward to reading in August. But now I think it's just as well, because August was a miserable reading month. I read 3 books, so less that I did not even bother to make a wrap up. So I think participating in the readathon this month would be a chance to change it all around and get a lot more reading done. Initially I was planning to make a full TBR video for it, but I didn't get around to it. So I guess I might as well go into it at the beginning of this video. So here's the TBR. So every participant of this readathon, their TBR will be different depending on what calling their character has. So this readathon is supposed to bring back the vibes of old school RPG, tabletop RPG games like Dungeons and Dragons. So you get to have your own character, and they'll be studying at Orilium Academy towards a particular profession or calling. So my character, her name is Rigzin, and she's studying to be a mage hunter. So I made this spread in my notebook about all the prompts that I need to be completing. I haven't filled it in yet because until the moment I'm making this video, I still wasn't very sure about what the books that I want to read for each of the prompts are. But now I've finalized something, so I'll fill that in later. Since she's studying to be a mage hunter for the autumn readathon, I need to complete 6 prompts. So firstly, the subject that I have to finish is spells and incantations. And in this I need a distinguished, which is the 3rd tier level, which means I have to complete 3 prompts to reach up to it, the previous 2 levels as well. So firstly, for ordinary, I need to read a 5-star prediction. Now this is a little tricky because usually I never know which books I am going to give 5 stars, and I never prioritize reading my 5-star books. Sometimes because I've loved the other books by the author or the previous books in the series, I know that the next book is going to be a 5-star, but I don't read it exactly because of that reason, because I'm too busy reading the other mediocre books that I know I wouldn't like, just because I want to save my 5-star books for a better time. So this time is really putting me on the spot to make sure that I do read a 5-star prediction. And for this, the book that I've picked out is Freedom in Exile by His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama. This is his autobiography. I got this book from the bookstore on the temple grounds of Namdrolling Gompa at Bailakope when I visited when I was in 4th grade, I think. Back then, I didn't know much about the Tibetan freedom struggle or honestly anything to do with the Chinese invasion of Tibet. I was very ignorant of that. I was 9. And it's not really something that is taught to us in school. So it took me until 9th grade to actually hear about this, and when I learnt about it, I was horrified. And since then, I've been really affected by all the tragedies that have happened, all the injustices that the Tibetans have suffered. And reading His Holiness Dalai Lama's autobiography would be a good way to understand more in detail about the struggle, as well as it's basically his memoir of being identified as the Tulku, as the next Dalai Lama, and basically the story of his life, escaping to India from Tibet as a refugee, about organizing the refugees who came to India after the atrocities of the 1950s, and basically how he has now established himself as a global figurehead for his people and also for world peace in general. So I think this would be a very inspiring read, but also difficult at times. I have flipped through a couple of chapters here, and every time I have to read the passages about the things that the Chinese did. Oh God, it makes me so infuriated. So yeah, this is a very important read that I've been meaning to read for quite a while, and yeah, it's obviously going to be a 5-star read. I don't think people should rate memoirs or like autobiographies because it's the person's life. What right do you have to judge someone else's life? But this, I know I'll give it a 5-star purely out of respect for this individual and also for the Tibetan freedom struggle in general. And as a Buddhist person myself who resonates more deeply with the teachings of Tibetan Buddhism as compared to the other strains of Buddhism across the world, I think this is a must read for me. The next prompt is book shown in any of Book Roast's videos. So Book Roast is the creator of the Orilium Readathon. So this prompt is basically go through her videos and find any book that has been mentioned, even for a brief second. If you're interested in, then you can read that for this prompt. So for the rest of the books, I've been trying to fit my borrowed books to these prompts because those are the ones that I need to return to the library or to my friends really soon. So because of that, I went through it and I found The Stolen Air by Holly Black. This is a very recent acquisition from the library and I need to return it within the month. And this does fit the prompt because it was mentioned in, I think, the 2023 Anticipated Reads video. So I got this, I was very lucky to find it in the library. It was in a very dingy corner somewhere at the back. So yeah, I'm glad to have found it. So I read the Folk of the Air trilogy and it was okay. Like, I loved the writing style and the atmosphere and the way fairies are depicted in it, like with in all their cruel glory. But I wasn't a big fan of like Jude as a character or her relationship with Carden. I thought that was just, it was bizarre. Like when they got together in the last book, oh spoilers. What happens in the last book, it felt like a fever dream to me. But this book, I started reading it actually. I've reached up to chapter 2 and I love the main character in this. Like, I haven't read from a main character I actually enjoyed reading from in quite a while. So in this book, we follow Suren, who is like a kind of minor character in the Cruel Prince trilogy. She appears in the second or third book. And she is like the queen of another court. Well, she's queen only in name. Essentially, her parents are the ones controlling it, and she's like a puppet monarch. And this is about her and Jude's stepbrother, Oak, after they're grown up. So in this, they're like teenagers. Oak is 17 and she's 19, I think. And this one so far, it still has all the beautiful writing style of the Folk of the Air trilogy, but I'm also enjoying the story and Suren as a character way more than I did Jude. The final prompt under Spells and Incantations is steal a book from another TBR. So basically you can just take a book that someone else has set for their TBR. It doesn't have to be the Orilium Readathon TBR, any TBR that is made at any point in time of any creator on YouTube or like Bookstagram. So I went through some of my fave booktubers videos trying to find a book that matches with the books that I need to read on my shelf over there. And yeah, I don't think this was like, I think this was mentioned in one of Emmy's TBRs. She really loved this book. I think it was a 5-star book for her. And this one, sorry, the dust jacket is missing. I borrowed it from my friend. It has some like crayon stains on the cover. Never mind that. This is The Raven Boys by Maggie Stiefvater, which is the first book in the Raven cycle. And this one, I'm sure she mentioned it in one of her TBR videos. Anyway, she read it and she really loved it. So I think I'm just gonna take this because I couldn't find any other book that fits this prompt. So this one it is. And this, I don't know too much about it. I think the main character is called Blue and like her family is a bunch of clairvoyants and they all have these like mind reading abilities, predicting the future, various abilities like that. And it is said that there's a prophecy surrounding Blue that the day she kisses her true love, they will die or something like that. And it's a very vague prophecy, no details. And then there's a group of boys in a private school near her house. They call themselves the Raven Boys and they're like very kind of elitist. And yeah, she hates them, I think, but then she becomes part of that group. Then there's some other plot going on. I've heard there's something to do with King Arthur. I'm really not sure. It's a very famous series. It's quite an old one, but lots of people have read it. And yeah, I don't know why I don't know more about it. I know the general premise, so I think this will be interesting. But I wouldn't have picked this up on my own if I hadn't borrowed it. I think I'll read the first book to check out what the vibes are and see whether I want to continue with the series. Now, the next subject is conjuration. And the first prompt, there are 2 prompts for this. The first prompt is a book with a bat on the cover. Now, this was so difficult to find. I don't own any physical copies of books with a bat on the cover. I'm thinking this is to do with like the spooky Halloween mood kind of, and I don't own any spooky books. Definitely not ones with bats on the cover. So this was a problem. Like I had to search on Google books with bats on the cover, and I found this series. It's called Silverwing. I forgot the author's name. I'll put it up here. I'm reading it digitally anyway, so I don't have a physical copy of it. So this book, it reminds me of Wings of Fire, which is like my all-time favorite series, except with bats instead of dragons. So all the characters in this are bats, and the premise seems kind of similar to Wings of Fire. There's like a war going on between different bat tribes, and our main character, I think, is a Silverwing, and he has to fix stuff. I don't know the plot. I just know it has a bat on the cover. The main characters are all bats. It has bats galore, so I think that would count. So I'll read that and let you all know what I think about it. I've never heard of it before until I searched it up, and it had this big bat on the cover. So Silverwing. The second prompt is a book that has won an award, and for this I'll be reading Purple Hibiscus by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. This one, it has won, let me check that out. It has won the Commonwealth Writers' Prize in 2004 when it came out. This is actually her debut. Since then she has written even more like very famous works that have won very prestigious awards. This book was shortlisted for the Orange Prize of Fiction in 2004, and her next book actually won the prize in 2007, I think. And this was also longlisted for the Booker Prize. So yeah, it was nominated for plenty of prestigious awards, and it has also won several ones. So I thought I would pick this one up. I don't know too much about this. It's like literary fiction, historical fiction. I think I'll read the blurb and tell you, because I don't know too much about this. 15-year-old Kumbli lives in fear of her father, a charismatic yet violent Catholic patriarch, who, although generous and well-respected in the community, is repressive and fanatically religious at home. Escape and the discovery of a new liberated way of life come when Nigeria is shaken by a military coup, forcing Kumbli and her brother to live at their aunt's home, a noisy place full of laughter. The visit will lift the silence from her world and in time unlock a terrible, bruising secret at the heart of her family life. So I think this one, it has to do a lot with religious trauma and the atrocities committed in the name of religion, but also with the civil wars that have been raging in Nigeria during that time period. And I think this would be a very poignant read. I have a lot to learn about this topic, so I think this would be a really interesting read. And finally, for the subject of restoration, there's only one prompt, and that is to read a book with a night sky on the cover. This one was also a bit more difficult than I thought, because not a lot of books have night skies on the cover, at least the books that I own. And I went through it and I found The Girl Who Drank the Moon by Kelly Barnhill. Now this book, I had bought it 2 years ago for my brother from a book fair for full price. Can't believe I bought it for full price. Since then I've been seeing it for like half that price in thrift bookstores everywhere, and I feel terrible every time I see that. Anyway, that aside, this book I read I think up to page 100 when I got it at that time, but for some reason I didn't continue on with it, so I think now would be a good time to finally finish the book. For this readathon, one of the main conditions is that you can't read books that you have like read partway, like you can't continue reading from there, you have to start from scratch again, which is what I'm going to do. I'm going to read from page 1 onwards, because honestly I don't remember any of what I read. Those 100 pages, they're all a blur in my head. I mean, I remember some stuff, but like not a lot. I don't need to read it from the beginning again. This one is quite thick for a middle grade book. I've noticed that most middle grade books don't go over the 350 page mark. Nowadays I think it's changing, but it used to be a thing. But here, this is like 380 pages, so it's like thicker than your usual middle grade book, which I'm fine with. I really love thick books. This one I will actually be able to tell you a premise of, because I've read till page 100. I think I'll be able to. Let's see if I forgot anything. So The Girl Who Drank the Moon, basically in this world, so there's this place called the Protectorate, which have lots of absurd laws, and one of them is that every year they take a baby, an infant from one of the families, and gives it as a sacrifice for the Witch of the Woods. Like they leave it in the woods for the witch to take. And the thing is, the witch, her name is Zan, she's actually a very kind person, and she has no idea why these villagers keep like leaving her a baby every year. But then she takes the infant and feeds starlight to it, nourish it on the journey to like the other side of the woods. There's like another city, and there she gives it to families who really want children but aren't able to. So she hands them over to better foster families. And that has been going on for several centuries. Until this year, what happens is that accidentally the witch feeds this baby moonlight instead of starlight. And that's a problem because now she has magic powers. And now the witch is obligated to raise her, because if she's like given to any other family without any proper magic training, who knows all the terrible things that would happen. When a child who doesn't know how to control her magic powers just like grows up in a household who has no idea what to do with her. So then Zan raises her as her own along with some other creatures of the woodland. And then this girl, she names her Luna. And on her 13th birthday, on Luna's birthday, her magic begins to emerge in full force, and thus some thrilling consequences that happen. And it basically follows that. I have read one other book by Kelly Barnhill, When Women Were Dragons, and that was an adult magical realism literary fiction, and it's to do with like the beginning of the feminist movement, like first wave feminism, I think. And that was a good read. I think this one I'll enjoy it equally, if not more, because it's a middle grade book, and those are always wonderful. So those are all the prompts that I have to read for, but there's also a book club pick. So all the participants, they belong to a particular house, like the Hogwarts houses. My character's house is House of the Arcane, and our house book club pick would be the Spell Shop, I think. I haven't heard too much about it. Again, that's another one I'll be reading digitally because I don't have the physical copy. I've never even seen it around in any bookstore here. The cover looks a bit weird, let me be honest. It looks like an indie book, which isn't a bad thing. It's just that the cover looks, I don't know, a little not polished enough to be like a traditionally published book cover. Am I being too harsh on the cover now? And all I know is that it's a cozy fantasy, quite autumnal, I think. And I think I'll enjoy reading it. To be fair, this book is the book club pick that I'm the least interested in. I feel like the other houses, they got really cool books, and then we get this. I don't know, I'm judging a book on its cover, which is something you should never do. But we'll see. I'll read it and let you know what I think. And I nearly forgot, there's also the Low side quest that will be continued on from the Spring Equinox Readathon. And I did complete the prompts for that one so far. But this time the prompts haven't been released yet, so as and when they are, I will update you all here. And I guess at that time I'll also be hard pressed to find some books, and that too, like my borrowed books that I need to return soon. I need to somehow fit them to all the prompts. So here's hoping that those prompts will be exactly what I need to finish the books on my TBR. And as of now, these are all the books that I'll need to read, along with those two others that I'm reading digitally for the month of September for this readathon. I don't know whether I'll be able to read any other books outside of this prompt. I do have, I think, 2 carryovers from August that I don't have much pages left in that, maybe like 100 or so. So I'll try to finish up those 2, but yeah, I think for now, these are definitely my main priority. I intend to see this readathon through to the end. Day 2 of the readathon, and I'm currently at my grandparents' house. And I'm sorry if you might hear any noises in the background because this house is like quite empty and also very large, so there's a lot of echoing, which means every small sound is magnified to such a great extent. And now there's been some dogs barking outside for like the past 1 hour. I waited so long for them to stop. They didn't, so I guess I'll have to talk over their barking. And now I'll just update the... Okay, they have finally shut up, which means I can continue with my update. So I read up to page 124 of The Stolen Air yesterday. I made a lot of progress. I didn't expect to read so much actually. So this book, it's just so easy to read. Like the pages just fly by on their own. And I think I'm definitely enjoying this a lot more than the Folk of the Air trilogy. As I've mentioned earlier, I really love Wren as a main character. And Oak is much more tolerable than Carden because he appears to be a very nice, wholesome person, very much golden retriever energy, but he also has that like flirtatious personality that is honestly a must for male leads in fantasy books. I don't know why. Why can't we have like serious male leads who take things very. And I'm not a big fan of those charming, sweet talker kind of male characters, especially when they're like the main character. Oh, that is so annoying. But still, it's quite a fun time. Another thing I appreciate about Ren is that her whole motivation is self-preservation. Like, she's doing all of this just to survive, to exist, and that's it. In Jude's case, one of the main reasons that she aggravated me so much was that I genuinely did not understand why she was doing all this. Like, at one point, she could literally have escaped to the mortal realm and just like lived there in safety, and instead she refused to do that and just continued to do all kinds of nonsense despite being a human, despite having such like a precarious position in the fairy world. She still did all of that. In this case, Ren, she is a fairy. So I like that we don't have that kind of power imbalance between the two main characters. Like, they're both fae, they both have powers, so that's good. And that also means Ren can't lie, so she is a reliable narrator, I guess. Like, everything she says is the truth. So that's really cool. So once I reached up to this page, I put it down for a while because I'm already nearly like 1/3 of the way through. It's just flying by, and I didn't want to finish this book that quickly. I mean, it's a library book. I have to return it, but I don't want to like fly through it. I want to take my time reading it. So I put it down for the time being, and I picked up this book today, Purple Hibiscus. I picked it up early on because I thought that if I left it towards the end, I might not have the motivation to complete it because I've read all the fun books that I have, and this might be a difficult read. I thought it would be like one of those like dense literary fiction that I don't gel with, that would be difficult for me to like wade through. But I started reading it. I'm on page 14, and I'm quite surprised by how readable it is. Like, the writing, the prose is very carefully constructed, but not in a way that makes it difficult to like understand. It says things in a kind of simplistic style, but it's really beautiful at the same time. And I don't know too much about this yet. Our main character, her family, they seem to be quite well off. Like, they live in this quite large manor, they have personal servants. Her father owns a bunch of factories, and he is a very respected member in the society, not only because he's rich, but he also contributed to like the independence struggle at that time. With his money, he contributed for that freedom struggle effort. And he's also kind of like a religious fanatic. He's like obsessed with going to church and like participating in all the masses, sermons and all. And he expects all of his family to do the same. So at the beginning, in the first chapter, the main character's brother like refuses to participate so fervently, and that ticks off her father, and then there's like a whole explosion. It's also hinted that he is abusive towards her mother, like he physically beats her. So yeah, their family, it seems perfect on the outside, but there's like a lot of fractures within it, and I think this will deal with that. And it says in the blurb that a military coup is going to happen soon, and I guess because they're rich and well off, they're going to be targeted, and yeah, I guess the story will like really progress from there. So far, this is easy enough to read. We'll see if even more difficult topics come up later on. That might hinder my quick progress through it. And apart from that, yesterday night, right before I slept, I have this habit of like reading 10% of whatever ebook, because that's the only time I pick up ebooks, like because I have to switch off the light and then I can't read my physical books. So I just take my tab, and it has that night light mode on it, so it won't hurt my eyes either. And I started reading one of the ebooks that I have for this readathon, which is Silverwing, and that's a book for the prompt bat on the cover. And I reached 10% of it. It's quite a short book, so by 10% it means I've already like read quite a lot of it. It only has 200 pages, I think, so that's like really short. I don't usually read like novels which are 200 pages, so that's interesting. And it really reads a lot like Wings of Fire, the Dragon series. Like this one has anthropomorphic bats, and that's really cool. I love how the anatomy of the bats, it's like always described, so you won't think that you're reading about humans. Like, you're very aware the whole time that you're reading about bats. And our main character, his name is Shade, and he's like a newborn. So he's only like a couple of months old, and he lives with his mother and the rest of like the female bats in the nursery colony called Tree Haven. And they're preparing to go south during the winter to this place called Hibernaculum. Basically, they hibernate through the winter in these giant caves, and the entire colony they're like preparing to go there. And the thing about Shade is that since his birth, he was always like, he had a bit of stunted growth, so he's like the smallest among all the newborns. Everyone is larger than him, and because of that, he gets kind of bullied, I guess. He can't hunt as efficiently as the others, and that's a problem because he needs to like fatten up before the winter. And also in this world, the bats have like this kind of rivalry with the owls. So that means that the owls there's some kind of treaty between them, which means the owls can't hunt the bats at night, but as soon as the sun comes up, then the bats are like fair game. Because of that, no bat has like ever seen the sun rise, except for one, his father. He really wanted to see the sun rise, but because of that, an owl hunted him and killed him. So his father's dead. But because it's like the main character's father, I feel like the entire plot of this would be, turns out his father might not actually be dead, and he has to go and find him. That's what I think is going to happen. From reading lots of middle grade books, I can kind of like predict what's going to happen next. This one, I mean, I don't think it's like middle grade fantasy, because this world, it's our world itself, like the modern world, because it says that there are human roads and like the vehicles. So there's like cars around. None of them have seen a car, but then it's like described that there are humans with their strange contraptions on the roads. So yeah. So far I'm quite enjoying it. It's like very easy to read through. So I can just like fly through the pages very quickly. And I'm sure that I'll be done with this in like 5 or 6 days, because it's only 200 pages and I'm reading 10% every day. I'm sure I will get there quickly. And once that's done, I'll switch to reading The Spell Shop digitally. That one is a bit longer. Turns out that's a fantasy romance. I didn't expect that. And when I said it has like an indie book cover, and that put me off, well, it is an indie book, so of course it has an indie book cover. But I'm not going to judge it because of that. Lots of very famous books these days were originally independently published, and then they got picked up by a traditional publisher, like the Atlas 6 trilogy by Olivia Blake. So yeah, I'm not going to judge a book harshly just because it's an indie book. I'm sure there are like wonderful indie books out there, so I have to like put aside my prejudice towards them and just like go into it without any like preconceived bias. Over here in this house, the internet connection is like extremely spotty. It's like practically non-existent, and that means I'll definitely get a lot of reading done because there's nothing else for me to do. There's no other like distractions around. I'm only here for like a couple of hours because my grandmother has some like business at the bank over here, and we'll be leaving in I think maybe 4 or 5 hours. But that's still plenty of time to get some reading done. I want to get maybe 1/3 of the way through Purple Hibiscus, and if it starts getting difficult for me to read in one sitting, I think I will switch to The Stolen Air. So yeah, I'll definitely be making quite a lot of progress today, hopefully. It's day 4 of the readathon and I'm back at my house now. And I've been making very steady progress across these 4 days. Like every day I would read 100 pages of whatever book I'm reading physically at the moment. Like now I'm reading Purple Hibiscus and also 10% of the ebook that I'd be reading. So that way I'm pretty sure I'll be able to finish all the books by like day 20. I've sat and calculated and I'm very sure I'll be done by then. So that's really great. The low quests that I've been waiting for some reason, they haven't been published yet, so that's a problem because then I'll need to work out the books I'm going to read for those later on. But we'll see how that goes. Anyway, as long as I complete my 6 prompts, and I guess the Guild Book Club, that's like an optional thing. As long as I complete the 6 books that I'm meant to read, I'll be done with the readathon, and that's great news. So currently I'm still reading Purple Hibiscus, and this one I'm currently on page 228. I think I'll finish the book by today. I only have around 70 or so pages left, so I'll definitely finish it. So far this book, it's like a very difficult book to talk about, even though it's like very easy to read. The writing style is so digestible. It's written in an almost breezy way, despite the fact that it's talking about very difficult things. The crux of the story is how tyrannical that any person who gets indoctrinated into any form of organized religion can become. In this book, it's Catholicism, but honestly, any like major organized religion has some terrible things going on that if you think long enough about, you'll be absolutely nauseated. And this one gives you that feeling of something crawling beneath your skin. While you're reading it, you feel like the main character. Like you can see all the things that are wrong around you, but you don't acknowledge that it's wrong. Because from a young age, our narrator, Kumbali, has also been indoctrinated into it. So every time her father does all of his like oppressive policies or like treats them in an absolutely terrible way, she thinks he's doing it out of his love for them and of God, and that anytime something goes wrong and she gets punished, she thinks it's her fault, that for some reason she hasn't been a good enough daughter. Kumbali and her brother Jaja are always under extreme pressure to be like the perfect children. They have to always come first in school. If they don't rank first, even if they just fall down to second, they get like horribly physically punished. And if they don't pray well enough, like if they don't put all of their concentration into the rosary or attending the mass, then they get beaten for that too. It's like a very horrible way to live. But it's also much more complex because while their father does abuse them, he can also be a very loving person. Like as long as they're doing everything right according to his rules, he is like the best father. He treats them so well, but like the moment something wrong happens, they step out of line, then it's like the fists come raining down, and their mother also is abused a lot by him. So yeah, it's a very like uncomfortable book to read, but at the same time we are reading from like this 15-year-old narrator's perspective, so a lot of things that happen, they're written in a very matter-of-fact way, like how she is viewing it. So it's like very unpredictable in a way. Like one moment her father's like the best dad ever, and then the next moment he's like pouring boiling water on her legs. So yeah, it's a lot to take in, but I feel like the author Adichie does it in a very masterful way, and that takes a lot of talent. So I am enjoying my time reading it. Would I say enjoying? It's not giving me like joy reading it, but it's also a very interesting look into like the politics of Nigeria at the time. And I'm also learning a lot about Nigerian culture, which has been very fascinating. The descriptions of the food are incredible. Like they make me hungry reading it. I would really love to try some of the food mentioned here. The sentence that links to the title, it is said very early on in the book, like in the first chapter itself. First chapter is essentially the climax of the book, is what I've understood. So we read the first chapter, and then we just flash back into the past and see all the events that led up to that moment, and I guess the last chapter is going to like wrap up the book. That's a very interesting way of writing it, because we are like immediately thrown into like the meat of the story and things are happening all around us, and then just as quickly we're like grabbed back into the past and things are slowly explained, and then we'll be like flashed into the future again where we see the resolution of everything. So I am very nervous about what's going to happen next, but it has been a very interesting read. I will update you once I finish it, probably by tomorrow. And as for the book I'm reading digitally, Silverwing, I have reached up to 30% of the book, and I've been making quite like steady progress, as I've mentioned, this 10% every day. I'm currently at the 30% mark of Silverwing, and that has been going quite well. So far, what has happened is that Shade, our main character, he ends up in some trouble, but then eventually the tribe, they're migrating to the south for like their winter hibernation thing, and along the way there's a storm and he gets separated from his mother. This is mentioned in the blurb actually. I'm surprised that events that are like mentioned in the blurb, the things mentioned there, still haven't happened in the book. They only just started happening at the 30% mark. So that's interesting. So far we have met another one of the characters, a Brightwing bat, because there's like different tribes of bats, and she is a very interesting character too. In this world, certain bats are like banded, so they have this like metal ring put around their legs by the humans, and all the other bat tribes other than the Silverwings think that getting banded, it's like very, it would bring misfortune to the tribe. So any bat who gets this band put on them is like essentially exiled out of the tribe. Only among the Silverwings are they still kept around. They don't find banded bats as much as a taboo as the other tribe. So as of now, it's basically him and the Brightwing bat. I forgot her name already. Is it Marjorie? I don't think it's Marjorie. Yeah, anyway, those two, they're like trying to find his colony so that Shade can be back with his family and the Brightwing bat can find some answers about the bands. Day 6 of the readathon, and things are still going pretty great so far. Yesterday I was out the entire day. There were a lot of errands that I had to help my mother run, and I only got back late at night. I did take along the stolen air with me, but I didn't manage to read any of that because for some reason, whenever I did have time to read, the book wouldn't be near me. Like, it wouldn't be with me. It would be in the car, sitting in my bag, and I would not have access to it. So during those times, I would open my phone and read the ebook that I have, that is Silverwing. And I made a lot of progress on that. So I got up to 70% when I was out, and then later at night, like before I went to sleep, I got to the 80% mark. So I'm very close to the end of that book, and I've got to say, things have taken a very dark turn. Like, I didn't expect it to be this like gory, but that's what happened. It really evokes the feeling of reading those like classic middle grade books that you might have read when you were like in 5th grade. Like, I don't know how to explain it. There's a specific nostalgia that reading it just evokes in me, and I'm really enjoying it. It makes you feel that you yourself are a bat. Like, the author does a great job of writing from the perspective of a bat. It sounds weird the way I'm explaining it, but I swear it's like very. But I swear it's like very. But I swear, it's like very interesting the way you just get sucked into the story. Another thing I wasn't expecting, it does have some fantasy elements. Is it fantasy? It's more like sci-fi. There's some weird stuff happening that I didn't expect. And then something else, like a few chapters later, it's written in a way that maybe that actually didn't happen. And now I'm just like very confused. So I mentioned earlier that the bats are in a war against the owls, but it's not just against the owls, it's like bats versus every other animal and bird. So that's quite interesting because it is based on one of those folk tales. The more popular versions of it are from West Africa, like the war between the birds and the beasts. But where I have come across that folk tale, like when I first read it, it seemed so familiar to me. And so I looked it up in Google, and all of them were like from Ghana or like Nigeria. And I was like, that's not where I've heard it. And then I remembered I read it in this compendium of Mizo folktales, and that exact same story is there, except with like even more backstory for the reason of the war. Like in the other folktales I've read, the war just like happens one day. But like the Mizo folktale, there's like there's some lore behind it. There's like so many animals just like wronging each other, and it all culminates in this giant war. And basically the bats, because they aren't exactly birds, but they can also fly, so they aren't like the land animal. So because of that, they constantly switch sides in the battle. Like in the book, what happens is that the bats choose to stay neutral, and that's the reason why everyone hates them, because they didn't take part. But in the Mizo folktale at least, they constantly keep switching sides. As soon as the birds are going to win, they join to their side, and when they start to lose, they join with the animal. They're like double crossing everyone. So because of that, the rest of the creatures understandably hate the bats, and after the war is over, I think the birds win. I'm not sure, someone wins, and anyway at the end they both like have a peace treaty, and they all unanimously agree to banish the bats into the night, and they can't step out into the light of the sun again. So that's like the folktale version. And in this, it's also, the ending is similar. The bats are just like shunned from society, and they can't fly in the day anymore. Reading that like backstory about it in the book, it was quite interesting to me. How cultures across the world with like no common link between them have similar folk tales. That's like very fascinating to me. So I forgot to mention, I also finished reading Purple Hibiscus day before yesterday. So after my update, like I finished this by night, and it was such a strange experience reading it. Like, it's written so delicately, it's crafted so masterfully, and yet it's just brimming with pain. But like, there's beauty in that pain. It's so difficult to explain the way that this made me feel. And this is the author's debut work, and it's already so incredible, so I definitely want to read her other 2 books out as well. I think Americana is her most famous work. I did not know this book was by her, so that's quite interesting. And the ending, something very shocking happens, and I really wasn't expecting like that to happen. I guess when people are under a lot of like abuse, at one point they just like crack and do very unexpected things. So that was interesting. The book, it ends on a kind of sad but also hopeful note. Like it ends on a hopeful note actually, so that's cool. And this line, it really sums up what the book is about, but also the title, it's like referencing that. So purple hibiscus is like a motif in the book. Except for that line, it's not really a symbol for anything, it's just a thing in the book. But that line is at the beginning, so you don't really know like too much about the purple hibiscus, but once you finish the book it all makes sense. So Insulka started it all. Auntie Ifeoma's little garden next to the veranda of her flat in Insulka began to lift the silence. Jaja's defiance seemed to me now like Auntie Ifeoma's experimental purple hibiscus, rare, fragrant with the undertones of freedom, a different kind of freedom from the ones the crowds waving green leaves chanted at Government Square after the coup, a freedom to be, to do. But my memories did not start in Insulka. They started before, when all the hibiscuses in our front yard were a startling red. So yeah, that's this book. I would definitely recommend everyone to read it. It gives you a lot of insight into what is happening in Nigeria during the time period of the military coups that were staged one after the other. And then after that, today, so it's currently afternoon and I've already read my daily page quota. I want to read 100 pages every day. If I maintain that, I'll definitely finish all of my books. And this is technically what I should have read yesterday. So I still need to read another 100 pages of this, to stay up to date with my reading progress. But then again, I did make a lot of progress on Silverwing yesterday, so I think I can make that, a cheat day. It's not even a cheat day, I did read. So yeah, it's fine. And besides, what if I read 100 pages every day and I'm done with my books way too soon? That would be a problem too. So yeah, I think this is good. Things happen for a reason. And I'm currently on page 204 of The Stolen Heir, and it's still maintaining that momentum from the beginning. I'm still enjoying the story, lots of cool plot twists, and yeah, this really reads like a classic Fae story. Not really a fairy tale, more like those folk tales about the Fae where they're very evil and are constantly tricking you into doing your bidding. It does give that kind of eldritch vibes, and that's been very interesting. Ren did do some things that are kind of dumb, kind of questionable, and I don't like her character anymore. That's very harsh. But I don't know why I judge characters like this. As soon as they do something that I wouldn't do, no matter how much I like them, before they automatically get a black mark in my book. So I should stop doing that. If characters behaved in a very predictable way, then it wouldn't be an exciting book to read, would it? And the plot wouldn't move forward either. So yeah, I'm still enjoying my time with this. I'll be done in 2 more days, and I guess I can pick my next read after that. So it's day 7 of the readathon, the final day, as our week 1 is drawing to a close by tonight. It's actually 9 p.m. already, and I've never really filmed an update this late, ever. I've never filmed any clip this late, so this is quite new for me, because I was waiting the entire day for things to quiet down, and only now is there a certain degree of silence in which I can film. But it's just as well, because now I can tell you what I've been doing all day, which is unfortunately not reading a lot. I didn't manage to hit my 100-page quota for the day, but that's totally fine. I'll make up for it tomorrow and finish The Stolen Heir. So this is the one that I'm currently reading. I am on page 283, and there's only 350 something pages, so I'll definitely finish it by tomorrow and move on to my next read. And I think what I'm going to pick next is probably Freedom in Exile, because I think now I'm in the non-fiction mood, and I do want to read the autobiography of such a respected personality. And yesterday, I actually was supposed to read only till 90% of Silverwing, but things got so interesting, the climax was crazy. So because of that, I went ahead and just finished the book. So I'm done with my second book of the readathon by now, counting Purple Hibiscus. And oh my god, Silverwing, things just snowballed into this crazy conclusion. And the ending was so wholesome, and that's a total mood switch from what was happening till the 95% mark. It was non-stop action. This is such a fast-paced book, and you wouldn't think that a middle grade book about bats would make your heart bound in like acceleration so much, but that's what's happening. One of my favorite things in books is like chase sequences. I love a good chase sequence, preferably one set in like fantasy world, so there's like a monster horde chasing after you. Think like Wheel of Time book 1, that like chase sequence from the village. Oh, things like that are my fave. And this has like so many chase sequences. Honestly, I could sum up the entire book as this like giant chase sequence cut into bits, because that's what it is. And it was so incredible. So yeah, I'm definitely continuing on with the series because it ends on like a very cool cliffhanger. And what I predicted earlier about his like dad not actually dead, yeah, that's true. I mean, I don't think it's even a spoiler because you can see it coming like a mile off, because typical middle grade book plot. But this book, it was definitely like so much more than just like a cutesy middle grade book, because it had several discussions about like religion and cult following and like belief in something that isn't really proven, but you can't like disprove it either. So yeah, it had a lot of cool discussions for a middle grade book aimed at such young readers. So I really enjoyed all of that. And also, I wasn't expecting how gory things got. Like, it got dark real quickly and it stayed dark. Another thing that I appreciate, speaking of dark, is that bats, they're colorblind, right? So because this is from the perspective of a bat, like there is not a single like color word other than black or like silver or gray, like other than like grayscale colors, no other color is mentioned, because like obviously our main character cannot see any other color. So I really loved that, and it shows that you can come up with beautiful descriptions even without mentioning color. Like, it's not necessary. So the night world that is portrayed, like the world of the bats, it's like described so beautifully, and you just feel like you're flying through the skies with them. I would definitely recommend you all to like read this if you want to experience, one of those classic books that you might have read in middle grade. Like, if you just want a quick like throwback to those times, pick up Silverwing. It's so good. I can definitely see myself reading all the books. And I think I'm going to shut up right now because this video is already like over 50 minutes long. And I don't want to make it any longer because I don't even know if anyone wants to hear me yap for like such a long time. So I'll spare you guys that and just sign off for now. And I'll start filming my next week from tomorrow onwards. And you'll probably be seeing this video on like either the 8th or the 9th, because I've already finished editing all the clips until this one. So once I finish editing it and make some more corrections here and there, make the thumbnail, it will be good to go. So I'll see you all in the next video. Hope you're all doing great. Do let me know what you're reading in the comments down below, especially if you're participating in the readathon. How is it going for you? Do let me know. And if you enjoyed this video, give it a like and don't forget to subscribe for more British content. I'm looking forward to catching you in my week 2 vlog. See you later. 再见.